Well,
Awesome. I'm here with my friend Justine. Justine, welcome.
thank you. Thank you for having me, Mike.
I'm so excited to dive into your story. You've got, I think, a really cool background, and you did something really brave and admirable in terms of sort of leaving a very secure full time job to pursue something you're more passionate about. But before we get there, maybe just give a little bit of backstory about who you are, and yeah, we'll start there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm Justine. I'm a software engineer and I've been doing that for about 10 years. I think coming up November. And I recently quit my job at Amazon to pursue entrepreneurship.
Very
Yeah.
cool. And what like that's such a huge and powerful thing. I did a very sort of similar thing where I was just like, I'm working this space. I'm not loving it. I was on this trajectory to be a college president, and then just knew it was time to leave. Um, what were the inflection points where you were like, I think it's really time to go? And when was like, what was that decision like, and how did you ultimately decide to leave?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur probably starting in 2017 and just didn't know how to do it. I had not even the slightest clue. And then I discovered some entrepreneurship communities in the tech space and would like just, you know, peep in and watch everyone. And I just couldn't figure it out. And so I was like, okay, maybe if I just let it rest, it will just come to me and it will just work itself out. And that never did. And so in 2020, I joined Amazon. And from the very first day I started there, I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy the experience. But I tried to make it work. So my first role, I didn't like the work that I was doing, and I didn't really feel a sense of camaraderie with my coworkers. They were nice people, but just I didn't feel the vibe. And so I switched roles to a better role, much better role that I did enjoy some aspects of it, but it still wasn't for me. It was a more customer facing role, and I was basically a consultant helping these large conglomerate companies build their applications in the cloud. And so it was a lot better because I wanted to work in the cloud and stuff, but I still the days were long and I still didn't feel a sense of purpose or the work wasn't meaningful to me. And so in October, I had had enough and I was planning to quit then. And then I told my boss, and he said, okay, let's try something else. I had another idea um, to switch to data engineering when I was there. And he said, okay, let's give that a try. And so I tried that for, I think, 1 or 2 months. And I was like, no, I'm tapped out. I really don't like this. I'm glad we tried it because at least now I can't ever sit down and think, oh, what if I had tried that? And, you know, so in December, 2 weeks before Christmas, I think I was like, yeah, I'm gonna quit. And yeah, and then the 30th was my last day, or yeah, 30th was my last day, and we went our separate ways. So that's
Yeah.
the journey.
Now, along the way, like, did you feel like you were building new skills or growing professionally as you were sort of taking these different jobs? Was that like, did it feel like it was, even though it was like not a straightforward path and not something you were liking, did you feel like you were at least like going in a good direction?
I was definitely building skills, but not skills that I would say are the core skills for entrepreneurship. I was mainly just building software engineering skills. And yeah, of course, some of them like talking to customers and stuff. That was good and good experience. But I still don't think it's the same as if you go out on your own and you have to talk to customers on your own, right? Because then you have this whole team behind you that's also talking to customers and facilitating the conversations and stuff. So I'd say, yeah, I was building good skills, but primarily working in the cloud, there was a moment when I was like, yeah, you enjoy this, but like this skill that you've acquired, how are you going to create a business around this? Like, you're likely either going to teach other people about the cloud or become a consultant. And are those two things that you want to even do? And I was like, not really. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I know that wasn't really it. So yeah, I would say
Yeah.
yes and no.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you quit, did you have like savings goals sort of set up? Did you do that exercise where you're like, okay, I'm gonna bank this amount of money, or I'm gonna look at my costs, or like how'd you think about some of those pieces?
Yeah, so my original plan when I said in 2020 this was going to be my last job, my original plan was I had lots of savings, but I was going to try and invest in real estate and try to earn some residual income from real estate.
Hmm.
And that didn't quite work out, mainly because I got a little bit nervous that it wouldn't work. And I was like, I don't want to put so much on this because I'm going to be depending on it while I'm trying to also figure out this entrepreneurship thing, and I don't want distraction. So I didn't end up going down that path. Um, so I just tried to stack as much savings as I possibly could. And yeah, and then my husband and I worked out an agreement where, he takes care of the major bills and I'll just still handle some of the smaller bills and stuff just so everything's not on him. And yeah, that's kind of how I'm winging it. And I figured if push came to shove, I could do like, you know, walking people's dogs in the neighborhood,
Totally.
or, little stuff like that. Or I've been getting some requests for freelancing, and so I know that's always there. I could do that. But I haven't taken any because I figured most of them would be distractions. So, but if push came to shove and I really needed to earn some cash, then I would do that.
Yeah, I think there's this, and that's awesome, and I appreciate you sharing and going into that, that degree of specificity there, because I find that there's this like narrative people have in their head around like needing to work and needing to sort of continue these things and having to sort of stay because they're afraid of the repercussions of if I leave, it's going to be hard to get back into this industry,
Yeah,
or if I like, if I step away, like, um, I'm not on this sort of path anymore.
Mhm.
But when you really break it down, I felt like so much of that I think is in your head. And like worst case scenario, it's like you can always just go back to what you were doing
Exactly.
before,
I figured
right?
exactly. I never had any fear about not being able to go back. I guess a part of that is the privilege of being a software engineer. There are lots of jobs, so I didn't really worry about that. And then also, I would always get freelance requests here and there every now and then. So I knew at the very least I could do that too. So I was mainly more nervous about having to go back to work, like this entrepreneurship thing not working out, and then I have to go back into a 9 to 5 job. And I was like, God forbid, I don't want to do that ever again. Um, I mean, there's some jobs that I wouldn't mind in some industries that I really wouldn't mind going back to, but flat out, it's not really a goal of mine. You know what I mean? And so I had a lot of fear around that. And I actually ended up getting coaching because I knew I needed some additional help to kind of get over that mindset of fear of going back to work, fear that it's not going to work out. And yeah, so I did coaching for 6 months to kind of help me with that. So it wasn't just oh, I'm ready to quit. And it actually took a lot of mental training and support in order to make the leap.
It's so fascinating you said that, and I appreciate you sharing that because I feel like that's such a big piece of the leap. It's just there's some kind of mechanics that are happening in here that people really struggle, and I know I really sort of struggled with that too. It's like I had this sort of intuitive sense for years that I was just on this path and doing these things and just kind of feeling like I was like almost on autopilot with even just some really sort of critical, important things rather than like fully engaged or kind of like to what you were saying before, really like leveraging the skills or the things that I wanted to do. I felt like all of those were really sort of dormant, but I kept pushing and doing these things because it just had this intuitive sense that that's what I was supposed to do. And
Exactly.
it took like for a lot of people, I think it takes that 6 months of like getting your own mental, your mindset sort of shifted to even
Yes.
say like, okay, I can go in this path.
Yes, yes, it really did take some time. And I'd actually been doing coaching for a year prior. My first two coaches were good, but they were more, one was an executive coach. So he was helpful, but not really um, for my, what I was struggling with, I think. And then the first coach I had, she was a business coach as well, but more of like, I I consider her a technical business coach. So, figuring out taxes and all the back end stuff, and how to think about content creation. But I needed someone to help me unlock the fear, and like bring up all the bubbling stuff that's lying beneath the surface. And so yeah, I ended up working with a coach for 6 months on that part.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it sounds like that helped quite a bit, right? It put you in a different
That
mental
was
space. And
a game changer because we were meeting, I think, every 2 weeks for 6 months. And it also served as accountability. So in 2017, when I really wanted to do this, I I didn't, I think if I had gotten a coach then that was like, okay, let's make a plan. And every week or every 2 weeks we're meeting and we're making progress on this plan. Because sometimes I'd just get stuck and I'd just be like, okay, it will come to me. And then a year would pass and it never came to me. Whereas with a coach, if it doesn't come to me in the 2 weeks that we spent apart, then she'd ask another question and be like, okay, so then what can we do to kind of get this thing going and come up with ideas and stuff. So I think to me, coaching is life changing.
yeah,
Honestly speaking.
that's really cool. And you stepped into a completely different space. I think you did something that was really awesome and brave, but also very thoughtful because you were like, okay, I'm going to essentially take like a professional sabbatical, and
Yes.
I'm going to take this break from it, and I'm going to start sort of this entrepreneurship journey. Um, can you walk us through like where you started? Because it seems to me like you've done a really great job of cultivating a personal brand, and you've got some foundational pillars, it seems, in place for that. But walk us through like what that looked like
Looked
for
like.
you.
Yeah. So I started with the personal brand stuff, I would say in August last year when I took the course Ship 30 for 30. I'm not sure if you heard about it.
Of course,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So I don't remember how I heard about it, but I just knew that if I was going to go this route, I'd been reading a lot of books, and I knew that if I eventually wanted to create a product or a business, it's smart to do the community building beforehand. So as I, and at the time I had no ideas. I still kind of don't really have any specific ideas, but I was like, okay, this is something I can actually do now. I really like to just get moving and take actions, take steps, just to get the ball rolling. And I was like, okay, I can start posting now. So I had a lot of fear, and so I signed up for Ship 30 to kind of, build with a community and stuff. And so I started in August, and then once that finished, a friend of mine connected me to someone who focuses on Twitter growth, and I just figured that would be great for to continue with the accountability and keep posting and stuff. But I kind of fell off a bit in October because work got really busy and stuff, and so that was the beginning journey. And then you have the chapter of when I quit and then went 100% into it. And so I started with Twitter because I'm really big on consistency and doing just what you can be consistent with, because I've seen other people try to start brands and followings starting with like YouTube, and of course there are some people that do that and it's successful, but a lot of people fall off because of just how much time and effort it takes. And I figured if I wanted to be consistent, the best place to start is Twitter, because I can't make any excuses. I could just do at least one tweet a day, right? And sometimes even that is hard because I'm not naturally I don't speak in sound bites or think in sound bites. So sometimes coming up with Twitter content has been a struggle for me, but at least I know if I sit down for 30 minutes, I likely can come up with something. And so I've been focusing on that, and then primarily Twitter Spaces. And I was, kind of hanging around the tech community. And so I was posting a lot about the stuff that I knew about at the time, which was software engineering and data engineering, that kind of stuff. I knew that's not where I wanted to go, but I wanted to start with what I knew because
Hmm.
I didn't know where I wanted to go. So sitting down and twiddling my thumbs and trying to figure it out in my head, I was like, that's just going to waste time. So I'll just start posting with what I know. And, at least I'm learning about scheduling and all these other things, right? And then in March, I changed course. I was like, okay, I'm getting tired of posting about this data engineering stuff. It's not speaking to me. And it was doing well, but it wasn't speaking to me. So I was like, okay. I was also posting on TikTok, and TikTok is more of like a video journal for me. I talk about, like, I do a weekly retro and talk about how I feel about certain things and stuff. And I was like, that content feels really good to me. It just feels natural. I don't have to really overthink it and stuff. So I was like, I need to try and get Twitter to be more like that. And Twitter, for me, still, my content still isn't really like that yet, but I'm working towards getting it to be a lot more casual and like showing the actual bits and pieces of the journey. Um, right now, it's still very informational, like books that I've read and stuff like that. So yes, I'm currently in another transition now where I spent a month or a month and a half working on a newsletter, and I'm gonna hopefully launch next week. And
Awesome.
yeah, so it started with Twitter, and then Twitter Spaces and TikTok, and now I'm doing a newsletter, and hopefully jumping back onto Twitter more, um, and getting back into engaging more and spaces and stuff next week. Or that's what I hope to focus on going forward now that I'm kind of comfortable with the newsletter.
Well, that seems like a really great way to do it, right? You started where you were, like where you knew you had some expertise and where I
Yeah.
think you could sort of speak the language a little bit. It's just like, yeah,
Yes.
I know software engineering, I know data engineering. Like these are my people. I can talk to these kind of things. But
Yeah.
then I think very organically, you were like, okay, this like doesn't feel right. This is not
Yes.
what I'm really sort of interested in. And
Yeah.
then from there, was that when you really sort of like went more in this sort of like customer discovery, some of the sort of like product spaces? Like, is that kind of where you started to kind of get a little bit more interested in that?
Yes, I was looking at other folks on Twitter that I really enjoyed their content, and it was the folks that were kind of, going off on their own and on their solopreneurship journey or entrepreneurship journey. And I was like, okay, well, this is what I quit to do anyway, so I should just make content about that. But I just didn't really know what to post because, once again, I'm starting from not having any ideas, like scratch.
Totally.
I didn't know what I wanted to work on, and so there was a lot of fear of, like, okay, what do I share? I think you made a Twitter post about, if you don't know what to share, just build a personal brand. And I commented on that, and I was like, yeah, that speaks to me because
Yeah.
literally I don't know what I'm gonna build, and so I'm just kind of winging it and figuring it out. And I didn't really know how to share that. So so yeah, I just started with what I knew, and then you start to feel little things, and you get inspiration from here and there. And I was like, okay, I've been reading a few books that I could share about. I even did a thread today about one of the books that I shared about and or read.
Was
And
it the mom test? Was it the
the
mom
mom
test?
test, yeah.
That's
And
a great, I saw that. That was a really great thread.
yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I've been sharing book reviews on TikTok, and I was just like the other day, why can't I just do this on Twitter? I should just do the same thing on
Yeah.
Twitter. So yeah, so now I'm just focusing on trying to show, like, real, raw, unedited what the journey is like. Um, and I've been doing that on TikTok. I've been showing, like, okay, my newsletter design, how it started and what it looks like now, and thoughts on this, thoughts on that. And now when I go back to Twitter, which is, hopefully starting next week, I'm being more active on Twitter. I want to do that as well, and maybe post some videos and stuff. So it's been evolving, and I'm just trying new things and get back to spaces as well. So yeah, that's kind of how it evolved.
That's really cool. And like when you sort of think about like this personal brand that you're building, like what's your sort of philosophy around like how you're like your philosophy and your strategy for how you're building that? And then like, and maybe this is like too much of a loaded question, right? But like as you think about that, like where do you see that going with the business? Because you have all these like great ideas, right? And you're reading the right stuff. You've got this like great strategy. Like where do you think that will ultimately land, or is it still kind of like you need more time to figure it out?
Um, That's a really good question. I still definitely need more time to figure it out. My philosophy is winging it. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm doing. I'm on a runaway train and I'm just trying to figure things out, and just trying things and not overthinking. So that's my philosophy. Just winging it, not overthinking and testing, just constantly trying new things and testing things. And when I see someone do something interesting, I'm like, oh, I like that. And then I do that as well. And so where do I think it will go? I I'm not even sure. I definitely know I don't want to be known as like the tech person, and just spitting out tech content or something like that. I definitely want to have more of a relationship and have a friendly connection with my followers and stuff and people that I talk to and stuff. So that's why I'm happy to always jump on a call and talk to people. I've met quite a few people from Twitter and I've done one-on-ones and stuff. So I see it as more of like a relationship brand and friendly and sharing what I know and very raw, unfiltered. I'm not gonna try and doctor or polish anything because that's not me, so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, yeah, and then I think that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, like I think the thing I'm learning about personal branding too is like when you water it down too much, it doesn't like work. It's like not because it's not authentic, it's not real. It's like, and
Yeah,
you don't connect to it. You don't like find your tribe because like you don't vibe, right? So it just doesn't
exactly.
really work.
Exactly. You can't water it down into just soundbite. I mean, eventually, I think like some of the really big creators, they can because they have other means of connecting to people and they have so much work out there that people connect to it or have connected to it. But I think to start, you have to just be very raw and real and authentic. Just share what's going on, share your ups, share your downs, share the triumphs, the wins, the losses, and that's what I'm hoping my Twitter account will evolve to, or that's what I'm working on next to revamp it. So Twitter has gone through
Yeah,
quite a few evolutions. Somebody messaged me recently and they're like, I'm waiting for you to share data engineering content. And I was like, you should unfollow me because I'm not ever sharing. I'm not sharing that again. I'm sorry. That train has left the station. It's gone. So just kindly unfollow, if you're not interested in this new stuff. So yeah.
yeah. I think that's really cool though because it's like you know that this is not who I am anymore. And I started here. And if you want to continue to follow, then go for it. But if
Yeah.
not, then it's like,
Yeah.
there's plenty of other people who talk about this and talk about it well.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe I should highlight some folks that are sharing content like that next time. But yeah, so yeah, just building a relationship and showing the ups and downs and yeah, and so my newsletter, I was really against starting a newsletter because my perception of a newsletter was like, oh, it's just companies marketing to you. And of course, I knew about newsletters from, Justin Welsh or the really well known folks. But admittedly, I never really read their newsletters. Like, I signed up for them, but I never did because I've just never been a newsletter kind of person. And so a friend of, or someone that I was working with, he suggested that I do a newsletter. And then my coach was like, yeah, just give it a try. Just try. And I found that once I got over the resistance and I started to sit down and write, it made content a lot easier for me because once you write long form, then you can just pick out stuff for Twitter and pick out ideas for TikTok. And so even if, the newsletter doesn't take off and it doesn't go anywhere, the process of creating it, even just designing the landing page was fun. The whole process has just been fun to create and just try and experiment and stuff. So I'm definitely becoming a lot more open minded to things that I wasn't really interested in the past. I think I made a post about it that like 10 years ago, if you had asked me if I thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I'd be like, you're crazy. Like, what are you smoking?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm like writing a newsletter and posting on Twitter and posting on TikTok. It's crazy. Like, I would have never imagined.
That's really cool. And it's like for me that's like so relatable because I'm in this sort of place where I'm like I think I should do the newsletter, but I'm a few steps behind you where I'm still in that sort of like figuring it out, discovery, like what's the angle phase.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's helpful and reassuring to sort of like know that the
Yeah.
timeline or how you do it and all of that doesn't work out. I made the mistake of like conflating like the funnel because I just had like an MVP product I was testing, but I
Mhm.
conflated that with a newsletter and like made a mess. Like just I made all the typical mistakes you do as a new
Yeah,
person.
I actually saw someone post about that today. I don't remember where, but the getting confused between a funnel and a newsletter. Yeah, a funnel is. I don't even know much about funnels. That's something I need to learn about at some point. That's on my roadmap. But um, yeah, a newsletter could just be casual, like what you've learned, updates, retro, and something I want to do in the future is write a book. And I figured, oh, this is great. Like, I'm now creating all this content that I could use to put into my book in the future. You know what I mean? So, or many books in the future. I don't know. So I really do advocate. And it's amazing to know that I was like, no, I'm not gonna write a newsletter, and now I'm like, yeah, you should do it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of benefits, and I think one of Justin Welsh I think talks about this really well. But that content piece that you sort of spoke about, right? Because this, I think there's people that are sort of sitting down to sort of like write tweets and like architecting and building this perfect thing. Where it's like if you
yeah,
just like free write sometimes and
yes,
then edit and there's like so many tools that help you with that right now, right? It's like your
yes,
newsletter doesn't have to be this like 800-word magnum opus. It's like you just need
yes,
high value like stuff that's like that resonates with your audience.
yes.
um and if you're going through the process of creating that, you're also able to sort of like repurpose pieces of it for content.
Exactly, exactly. And so something I recently got into is building a second brain, Tiago Forte. Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard about him a while back and I was like, "Oh, this is an interesting concept," but I just didn't really it didn't feel necessary for me. And now that I'm doing the newsletter, I went back to some of his, interviews and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is useful, like connect instead of sitting down in one instant to write the newsletter, you're collecting ideas all the time, and then they just evaporate. So now, if you have a
um,
second brain and okay, I have this project that I'm working on or an upcoming project that I'm thinking about, then you just add snippets. So if I see, okay, for example, my newsletter, I like how some people do their footer. So I'll like take a screenshot and I'll add it to like a note about my newsletter. And now when I sit down to do it, I'm like, okay, I remember this. I'm gonna try and create one like this and just collecting little bits and pieces together and then the day that you sit to write it, then you're not starting from scratch. And I really like that. So that's something I've now started to incorporate.
that's so cool, and I'm so glad you brought up the second brain, because it's a concept I'm like just exploring and sort of learning about. But maybe for people that are sort of listening, like, can you explain like how, like what a second brain is and how you're thinking about it and using it?
Yeah, so a second brain is a note taking system and it's essentially allowing you to document all of the ideas and in pieces of bits and pieces of inspiration that you come across just while living and putting them together in a system that you can easily search and draw upon when you want to sit down and write or create a video or just create in general.
Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
and if we can
Oops.
even get more granular with that, what are you using Notion, or are you using like what are the tools that you're playing with?
So I've been using Evernote for a while, just for random note taking, not for, the second brain concept. And I like Evernote, but then when I went back to the second brain lectures and stuff, I heard about Obsidian and I heard about it a while back
Hmm.
as well, and someone had described it really nicely, um, about being able to connect different notes and stuff, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna try Obsidian, and so that's what I've been using now for like a week only. But I've also
Okay.
used Evernote, and so I like both. So if Obsidian didn't work, then I would go back to Evernote.
Very cool. Yeah, I've heard good things about Obsidian, but haven't really played with it too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, no, I
But it
think it's
looks,
really good.
yeah, really cool. Um, well, this has been super fun. Where can people learn more about you and follow your background and your journey and all the cool stuff that you're working on?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Justine Cloud Dev, TikTok. My handle is Justine Leigh, I believe, JustineEELeigh. And then my newsletter you could find on my website at justinelee.com. And yeah, I hang out mostly on Twitter these usually, so I'll be doing spaces again and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome, and we'll link all that in the show notes. But thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. It was really good to chat with you.
Very much.